Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is Friday, January the 11th, 2019, and I'm back again. We've been recording quite a bit today with BZ Rieger and Lisa Flamino Resch. And so BZ, you gave us a topic, and I like it, but I was a little, so at first, it took a second for me. Metaphors all around, illustrating the frequency move. And for some reason, when I was feeling into the frequency move, I was wondering, would it be fair to also consider it a frequency shift? Because move and shift is kind of the same thing, right? Or no? In what you were trying to express with this title, would it be fair?
Well, I mean, it's a huge subject, so yeah, it could be in there. But,
well, I guess part of the reason I'm asking is that I have been feeling, it's an actual feeling of a shifting when frequencies shift within my own field. Oh,
yeah,
yeah, that one there's been some of that.
Yes, walking through the living room and feel that shift.
Keegan says, "Oh, we're shifting again. Okay, let's do this."
Oh, here comes Keegan.
Bye, Keegan.
Yes. It could. It absolutely would be fair to say that, and that would come. You could say as a result of this, of playing with it, as a result of this awareness, as a result of this tool. He likes shifting, so he gets excited. He says, "Okay, let's go. We got stuff to do up in the."
I love that picture right there.
Look at that. He is just so adorable.
Go through the portal.
Yeah, exactly.
He likes to go through the energetic. There are portals when we're walking. He'll stop. I maybe notice, or he may notice at first, where something opens up. And now it presents itself a lot of times, not 100% of the time, but a lot of times it presents itself as an actual. So I can see it, perceive it, and it changes, and we walk through it. And then I guess someone said, "Well, how do you know where to get back?" And we just call it, to walk back out of it. Does that make sense? So if you have like a slinky and it's painted like a ferns and stuff, or maybe the part of the slinky is part of the edge, and it's a big slinky. And you can walk through it. You notice it there, you walk through the play, and then when you're done, it collapses, and you pop out, and you're, back in the forest that you were in. That makes sense.
I have a specific vision of what you're speaking of, so I can feel that. I can feel what you're saying there.
Anyways, that's a whole other topic. I just went off on that because I had a star dog on my lap, and so I was thinking of it.
Well, I was thinking about it because of some of the experiences, that I've shared of, experiencing myself in other realms at the same time. Mm-hmm. Oh, and
text message received.
Okay, well, sorry. I've had a specific feeling of
text message received.
What's about. Let me silence this. I usually don't like to, but this one will bug me for some reason. I feel like because I've had this happen in some other ways where I feel like being part of the all and singular and having multiple aspects like those in those fields. At some point, conscious travel, I feel I what you just were saying there and describing, in my mind's eye, I saw something similar to, well, okay, like I said, we've been watching Stargate, and I'm seeing a wormhole in which my consciousness traverses, perhaps in a flash, from one aspect of me to another and back again. And what you described there, something that you partake in with Keegan, that's what that brought to mind for me.
Yeah.
When I was feeling into that.
Except I go with it.
Well, I don't doubt that.
I mean, I go with the consciousness.
Right. And I like I said, once I'm convinced that once this becomes, I know it's innate, and I know that we already know how to do it, and I know that there are parts of me that for whatever the reason aren't ready, but at the time that I am, it will naturally be there for me, because I'm experiencing more and more all the time. But that's what I felt led to share with that was the visual that presented and the experience that presented when you said that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And so someone, just to play one more step over here, where someone said, well, after they said, what do you mean you go with it? But isn't it just in your mind? And I think that may have been what prompted me to put that out there too, is that, so stop. So we're not going to go do it right now. So I can be walking someplace that I've been before and I'm very familiar with. It's, in the middle of nowhere, but I'm very familiar with it. And will be part of opening one of these up. And I keep walking. So, the legs keep walking, and the Australian Shepherd either runs or, goes like this, and whatever speed we're at. And so, as the metaphor, the breadcrumbs on the path through the woods that you're taking, you're going, I've never seen that tree before. What's that well doing? Is that Declan's well, from Ireland? What's it doing here? Kind of a stuff. So we encounter things, and my star buddy there will go sniff things, will pee on things that, so, I mean, there's real stuff going on. That's on this walk.
Say that again, Lisa.
I said it's like somebody's been saying P-A-R-A. I don't know. Oh, sorry, our dog. If you couldn't say that word, you had to spell it. Or else somebody thought we were going and wouldn't leave you alone.
Well, he's in his own portal right now.
Yeah, we had to be starting something. We had
So he took out.
Well, I think almost everyone can relate to.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think almost everyone can relate to driving and then going, whoa, wait a minute, where am I? Because and I know that I used to think that that's, well, it's rote. I've done it so many times. It's like breathing. It's no big deal. But I I since feel a little differently about that because I'm certain that that is part of the whole, especially watching Lisa. Okay, because that's a very real thing, to be in the world and not of the world, consciousness wise as well. To be present and can it, but it's like it is a matter of focus and attention. I'm convinced that that's exactly part of what it is. And I feel too that it will be different for each's focus and attention, because everybody focuses in a different manner. Everyone's attention.
So here's a metaphor.
Okay.
Kind of a kooky one, but hey, I'm not supposed to argue. Just say it. You can turn on the TV, right? Or if you don't have a TV, you could say, like, YouTube or something, right? And you're watching one video. That's, maybe there's a series of them, okay? Or you were you're watching Stargate, right?
Right.
Now there are other things. There are other episodes of Stargate. Yes. Okay. So you can be in one and watching one, and that's playing forth for you. It's an energetic envelope. Does that mean that all the other ones, maybe we're in season 4 and you're in the first grouping of 1, 2, 3, 4 of season 4, right? Episode 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're in episode 1 in season 4. I'm just making this up. In season 4, does that mean that episode 2, or okay, let's say episode, because someone's going to kibitz over the number. So if we're in season 4, episode 2, and you're in that, so you're immersed in that, right? You're in that energetic envelope. Does that mean that season 4, episode 1 doesn't exist, or that you weren't conscious of it? So what I'm saying is, when you're driving the car, you may not quite remember how you drove home, except that you absolutely were driving the car and doing it fine as kind. And other you was, could have been doing lots of things. So part of that is, it's another one of those, it's a beautiful setup for a metaphor and for an actual in practice example to kind of tap us on the shoulder, that pulsing, right? To say, this is who you are. You can do all so many things, right? And you can do them all fully and capably, right? So you're saying, so what I'm saying is that, on the one hand, who is the you who's saying, I don't remember getting home, right? As opposed to that. So the same thing with going for a walk, and it can be in nature is a wonderful venue for it. But if maybe you live in a city and there's just a park, it could be just a small park. Like, sometimes park is like a half a block long, and it's maybe one small building's worth footprint. But there's at least one tree in this kind of stuff. So these can happen anywhere. Part of it is the noticing. Part of it is giving yourself the space and the permission to be flowing with it, as it relates to what I was describing about, and then calling it forth as it more and more as it presents itself.
Right. Well, and yes, exactly. Now I feel as though I may have accidentally shifted the conversation. I'm looking back over here at the title. Metaphors all around, illustrating the frequency move.
Yeah. So let's stay with the move first, and then people can shift.
Well, yeah, because that was more of a consciousness move that I was talking about there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you say a lot, and you're jazzed about it, and think it's cool and enamored with, and then give examples that they're metaphors all around.
Oh God, yes.
So okay, so that's absolutely so. And as you play with them more and more, you can see it, because you remember you had said, well, what do you mean metaphors all around? So we've talked about that, touched in different places around the different conversations. And so I was agreeing with you, I was driving and doing something, and nudges coming in. I thought, oh yeah, that'd be fun. We could play with that. So then more things, and just last night, another came in around that. And I do it all the time. So it took me a moment to realize it as a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So I do it. It's innate. It's just how I flow and do it. But it was shown illustrated very clearly that no, it's a thing. And actually, if you pull it out so someone can see the thing, then they can go, oh yeah, hey, I can do that my own way. And that is using metaphor to illustrate the frequency of something, and then people feel the frequency of the word picture you've created in that metaphor. And as you play with it more and more, you'll get more adept at coming up with ones that will do that. And that could be something that's a very high expansive frequency or a constrictive frequency, depending on what it is that you're wanting to illustrate. And the reason that that's such a helpful tool, you could do it for yourself in your own conversations. You can do it with other people, or if someone asks you a question or they don't understand or whatever, instead of selling them something, right? You play with a metaphor that gives them the feeling that it's illustrating that, and they move into the frequency of that. So we'll go into some examples in a minute, but one of the reasons that's so powerful is that, first of all, you're not selling or explaining or trying to go something around, the direct route to whatever it is that you wish to transmit. Because there could be a certain amount of cognitive sorry. The day is bleeding over. So, do you remember where I was?
Yeah, you were about to say there's a certain amount of cognitive dissonance, and I believe
Right.
you were going to say that it'll bypass that. Help.
Yes, because so you want to transmit something, but whether it's, hey, look at the chemtrails or whatever it is,
Right.
and it could be a conscious wanting to fight you, or I don't, or Sheila, you've mentioned a lot of things like someone's well, I'm not programmed, right? So doing it that way, it's the coding on the protection shields of the programming, comes alive and gets all spiky and sends out, the little mission ships that are trying to shoot you down.
Right.
But if you do it this way, you can create, you can illustrate in a multi-sensory way the frequency that you're wanting to transmit, yet you're doing it in a way, and that's one of the ways that you might be inspired to nudge to choose a metaphor, the metaphor that, you know, comes to you, or and you give forth to use, is that bridge for them. I might talk a lot about that, where you're building a bridge and you're walking them over. So you're not selling anything. You're not trying to tell them about the chemtrails or I don't know, the programming. We'll use those two, right? Because there's pretty common. Or so you're not trying to do that. But if you can create a metaphor and use that to illustrate frequency, they'll move to that frequency because they can get, at least on some level, the metaphor-ness of it. They have no idea what it's metaphoring for, but it's, you know, hey, it's a story, right?
Right.
So they'll go that. And once they do that, they feel it. They feel the frequency. So now they're in there. That's bypassing the ego mind altogether. And I'm not sure the right way to phrase this, but you could say it's so in your body, when your heart beats, it has a certain electromagnetic rhythm and all that kind of stuff. So in the frequency that they're now in and playing with, you know, they have moved, right? And we're about to get to where your shift comes in. So they've moved to that. There's no resistance. There's no needing to feel that they have to invest, or, oh God, I got to listen to this nut job again, or none of that's there, because they're playing over here, and they're experiencing the frequency. So you have actually bypassed that shielding. You've bypassed the ego mind wanting to jump in and go, well, I'm not, whatever it is, right? And they can feel it. Well, if they have a direct experience of knowing of that frequency. It could only be for a moment or two. It doesn't matter. They have it. It's locked in. It's a seed that locks in. So you're now, a good way to say it is, you're working in tandem with the totality of them to transmit something. They still are a choice all the way. Nobody's forcing anything on anybody. They can go with it. They can ask a question. They can go, oh, that's kind of like what you were, or feels like what you were talking. You know what I mean? So
Right.
That's why there's really a very helpful tool, because they can feel that. And then, depending upon awareness and how you're playing with them, you can notice that that's landed. You can notice that they've moved into that frequency, and they will then,
There's the key for me anyway. There's the key. Noticing whether or not they've moved into the frequency.
Yeah. Not assuming and thinking, okay, that's enough time. You should be there.
Yeah, it's not automatic.
Right.
Just because you said it doesn't mean.
So you notice that, and they've moved to, even if it's just a smidge, then you might go with another metaphor, or however it is. So let's say that they move there, and then you can start to play with whatever the subject is, the transmission desire, in a bit more of a direct way. It may not be on the freeway bulleting down the thing, or the Autobahn, or whatever it is, right? But since you've used this tool to bypass those other things, and they are choosing, because all of them is feeling this and choosing, then that's when the shift can then come in. So just like the move can be just a glance, or peeking under the hood, or whatever it is for a moment, or just taking the dust off the window and looking in the window, whatever. Maybe walking right in the door, maybe hopping right up on the picnic table, and you're in for the whole party, whatever it is, right? So there's different ways that the move can be that, and then the shift can be that. So as we talked about in in the singularity pulls Excalibur's sword from the stone, you know, in the allegory and the bardic tradition, all that kind of stuff, those were seeds transmitted and planted. And then the being is then a choice to do what they choose with. So this is a really helpful and fun way to do it, and you can do it on the fly. You can do it on any subject. And the beauty of it, not only for the being that you're connecting with, the beauty of it is that for you now, as you play with this more and more, you get more in tune, you get more in alignment, you get more in the rhythm and the flow and the whole syncopation of all of you transmitting these and decoding, you know, the things that come into you. So you may think, well, I'm doing this because it's helpful for them. But along the way, you're building your, you know, decoding skills and unpacking other things for you. So you're being of service, you know, over there, and to self as other.
Yeah, I can see where that decoding thing is. We talked about that today. Is the most important thing. That's what has helped me see the metaphor, is realizing that I can decode on so many different levels.
Right.
I hadn't really, I guess, I hadn't considered speaking in metaphor. I really hadn't, BZ. No, when I said I see metaphor everywhere, it was metaphor. I could see metaphors were communicating with me everywhere.
But that's speaking metaphor.
Well, I realized
the language, right? I'm gonna say it's both ways. No, I've been practicing that, haven't I? Though.
Yes, you have.
It's a skill set, and you got to work with it. You have to hone that skill. But the more that you practice at it, the easier it comes. I think I'm finding.
Yeah. And
well, first I had to wake up to the fact that you know, that's how I was being communicated with through, because now I can see, like I said, I see it everywhere, and it's like, oh, I see that metaphor. Oh my God, you know, it's just the brilliance of the way I've been communicating with myself is just so delicious. I can't stand it, but I hadn't taken it the step that you're speaking of now, and
you can do this with yourself.
Yeah,
well, you being the only one in the conversation, quote unquote.
Well, that's where it all started for me. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I give myself metaphors all the time. I go, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And then I'll metaphor back. Hey, I got a metaphor, and I'll raise you that metaphor. So it's I spend a lot of time just busting a gut laughing because it's, you know.
Listen.
Well, okay, that was a little of a spicy metaphor you got there. And it wasn't me who was coming up with it.
Right?
So, yeah, I mean, it's communication. It is transmitting in that way. So I'm nudged for a moment to just for a moment step beyond this, and then we can go back. It's the same thing, but
okay.
Beyond that, you talked about the skills, Lisa, and you know, getting familiar with that, flowing with that, right? This is also good for the larger bit of communicating beyond just, you know, the human that you think is all around you, right? Because metaphor is very close. It's one of the closest things to the language of light that we have, you know, from linear aspect of language. Because, why? Because it's transmitting a frequency. And that's really what communication and the language of light is all about, is frequency. So you could, another way you could say it is, it's close to being telepathic. It's you know, it's adding a more demonstrable, energetic flow to painting a word picture.
Okay, so this is the second time it's come up in my mind, so I have to go with it. It's either a question on my mind or someone else's.
Okay.
And at this point for this one, I'm not sure which, because there's lots of things that I've heard before, like, you know, The Wizard of Oz was one of my most favorite movies, and Labyrinth was one of my most favorite movies. And I knew all about 9/11 being an inside job, but I didn't get the metaphor for any of those until my consciousness expanded some, and I became open to hearing it and seeing it. And so I guess my question is, it's still all a choice point, isn't it? Where there's a certain amount of being open to hearing it or seeing it or wanting to, right? I mean,
well, yes. One of the first ways I would answer that question is, that question fits a little further down the road in what I was just explaining, because the metaphor itself transmits the frequency, and the frequency can be felt, and they move to the frequency. So illustrating moves the frequency, right?
I see. Yes,
Now,
because
they may choose to stay there for less than a wisp of a nanosecond. Cool. They have nonetheless moved the frequency.
right. Okay. Hence, my feeling earlier between the difference between move and shift.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you the frequency is being moved. The being in the frequency is in the frequency moving.
But
Do
they may not make
choose
that
to
shift
stay-
automatically.
Yes. Do they choose to stay there or not is a thing. And they haven't shifted into a frequency because, you know, unless they move the frequency and then either at that, in the same energetic envelope connection, you know, you move on and there's more of a shift, or later on, see, because this doesn't disappear. It may, as far as they're concerned, on the linear thing, right?
Right.
But it's, they see or feel or sense, or when there's another similar frequency, right?
Right.
Or the something that is again illustrating that frequency. Totally different. There's no other being. There's something that they do wherever they are, right? It depends on. It's a match. So here's a good metaphor. When I used to do the farmers market when I lived on the East Coast in West Tisbury, and I would have I made a lot of value-added products, and so I would have samples for some of those things out. I did it for basil pesto and some other stuff. And so I think it was, well, a bunch of people asked me. I think it was my mother asked me at one point. She said, well, it costs a lot of money to do the samples. And I said, yeah, that could be one way to look at it. I said, but I look at it on many different levels for what it's doing for me. So they come by the sample table, so they stop for a minute. And some people, you know, have lunch and put on weight and, you know, and get all their calories and all that kind of stuff at the stop. And some people are just, you know, tasting whatever. So it depends. Again, that's the mindset. But I'm not interested in changing anybody's anything. It's a gift. It's there. Enjoy it. And whatever you choose to do next is fine. But it's a seed, so it's a move. And that's part of the intention behind it. Although maybe way back when I started, I would have used different words to describe it. But it's a illustrating a move in frequency for them, so they can walk on, or they may ask me too. Well, that's good, but what they just did. But I was looking for X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Since I used to manage the market, I said, we had 52 vendors. I said, yeah, you're looking for so-and-so. And they would be, they're 10 down for me on the opposite side, or at the end, whatever it was. And so people would sometimes then say, well, okay, I need to ask you something. So you're selling stuff and you're having samples of the stuff. And I asked for something else and you just sent me to a competitor. And I said, no, I gave you the quickest path to get what you were looking for. So the sample changed the frequency. The exchange and energetic envelope of the sample changed the frequency. Giving them a short path to get what they wanted changed the frequency. And because they still had a little bit of the frequency on them, would stay with them. Either they'd come back around that day, they'd call me up on the phone, whatever, or they'd go, into the it's akin to Safeway here, that I would sell, a lot of the products in the Stop and Shop and stuff there, right? So because it's all about creating an energetic envelope and using the metaphor. The metaphor was the pretzel stick in one of the kinds of herbal mustards that I made, or the 4-basil pesto, whatever it was. That was the metaphor. And for me, yes, it would be nice to sell a bit of product, fine. But what was more important for me was moving the frequency. Because they're, it could be that they're present. It could be that they're now responsive to what's around them. It could be that they took a moment to actually enjoy themselves instead of rushing here and there, So it's
Well, there was a gift in it for them. Yeah. And if they were looking for it, they'd have found it. And there's a gift in it for you, too. Yeah. Oh, how wonderful. Yeah. I love that.
So that's a metaphor, actually, for an example of what we're talking about is to shift.
Yes.
You're illustrating something, and it's a move of the frequency.
Yeah, I've just concentrated on recognizing metaphors recently, but I love this since I see it everywhere. I'm just not really, I haven't become really adept at creating something like that on the fly at all, but I have two really good examples in the two of you. So.
Well, and you're the way I would categorize it and characterize it is that you're speaking in metaphor, in how you see metaphors everywhere. You may not be doing it in an audible way right this moment, and you may not be doing it with other beings per se, but you're doing it with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
So the metaphor for you already speaking in metaphor is that you see metaphors everywhere, which means that you're seeing, sensing, experiencing, coming into subject to one another, right? All the things that we talk about, that you're reading them. You might actually be reading it, of a page or whatever it is. You may be reading it, right? Well, that's part of speaking with, because it's an exchange and flow of information within you. So you're when I mentioned you can do this with yourself, I was talking about in a more audible, demonstrative way, but this is the same thing. It's just in a slightly different way.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. Okay, so I do get that. I mean,
You're fluent in metaphor.
well, I just didn't recognize it. You're right, because all of a sudden I'm thinking about our earlier conversation about being a human decoder ring. That's metaphor.
Yeah.
Duh. Yeah,
Okay,
because
Lisa,
that one was
you're working
mine. So, okay, I get it. All right. So again, the slow.
Delusions, I can't stand
And
it.
I'm pretty certain you said you were the one who came up with that title, right?
Yes.
But she doesn't speak in. Alrighty then. So okay,
Again.
so now for the tool part. So I'll deconstruct the last minute of video there. So I used a metaphor to illustrate a move in frequency. Because over here, no, I don't. Yeah, I see metaphor, but I don't speak that. I could probably do that. I should do that. Whatever. But I don't do that. So I used a metaphor on metaphors to illustrate and move. Right? Can you feel what I'm talking about here?
Oh, yes, I can.
Okay.
There's yes, and very clearly the difference between a frequency move and a frequency shift.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. Wow.
So the shift is a bit more when there's more. You don't have to be predominantly living in that neighborhood, right? Of that, but you can visit, right? Or maybe shift your neighborhood and move to a slightly different neighborhood, right? So in other words, there's more active consciousness about engaging with whatever the metaphor is that you're using, for the shift.
Well, I can really clearly illustrate the difference between a frequency move and a frequency shift.
Okay.
For me, my experience of a frequency move is something feels a little different. A frequency shift is something feels a lot different. So it's like, there with the move, it's almost imperceptible, especially if the consciousness, because that was the one thing that you said that I was like, okay, yeah, because if a move doesn't necessarily engage all the consciousness, which is why, in my view, the metaphor is the workaround for the cognitive dissonance, because not the move can be sort of imperceptible, not fully engaged, and therefore bypassing some of that cognitive dissonance. Because
it bypasses the ego mind altogether.
It's
a feeling. It's a feeling thing. It's a frequency thing.
Right. Right. But because the expanded consciousness isn't engaged because it hasn't had the chance, because of the programming and the ego, right? That's what I'm saying. Because of that workaround, an imperceptible move sometimes in that frequency through that metaphor. That's what for me, that's the difference.
And I would take it, for me, I would describe it a step further. So what you illustrated, I would say that's a bigger move. There's momentum to the move. I wouldn't describe it as a shift yet, because I can see a lot of times you go, and then
I don't fully have it,
and then we do another conversation, and we're like back over there in the other neighborhood.
Yeah, I know what that is.
This has come up a couple of times, and I wanted to add this for me. Movement is one thing, because I can be walking past you so fast that it kind of it moves you right along for a second. So movement doesn't necessarily imply, like you were speaking, BZ, of consciousness, like movement. But a shift more for me would be where I'm consciously aware of this movement and maybe I'm holding it, I'm directing it, I'm choosing it. There's a deeper level of consciousness now that I'm bringing to it,
Right.
is how I feel like too. Because even like, okay, so for instance, I have seen this happen with Sheila and I, where we're resonating in a conversation and we get it and we're tracking it and everything's great. And then like you said, 5 minutes later when we're trying to, well, it's just come around again, but maybe from a different angle. And then we're starting over again. And I realized that she was moving with the energy, but there's that alchemical shift or where something actually changes in the
Clicks in.
perception. What?
It clicks in.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is part of that alchemical
It is.
epiphany we
It's
were
an
talking
alchemical
about.
click. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is that alchemical epiphany type energy we were
Now
talking
you
about.
can. Someone just said, "Well, do you have to go to the move to get to the shift and the alchemical click?" No, you absolutely.
No.
There are no have tos.
And there
But-
are no pre-ascribed ways and steps to
No.
do it either.
But this is a very helpful tool for oneself with oneself and oneself with others, right? To do that, because you could call it a non-attachment tool. You know, you got a non-attachment laser beam metaphoric tool here, because they can, and they're doing it themselves, the other being that you can get. So you're doing it yourself if you're doing this with yourself. They make the move, and the other thing is that since nothing happens, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. So and a lot of times I know people are nudged I know they're nudged all the time and they're not listening to it, but I know they're nudged all the time to play with this in metaphor and illustrating something for a move, and they don't go with it because somehow, you know, like they're talking about this, or they wanted to talk about this, and this nudge comes up and it's like, I don't know, I know, making cookies and the cookie batter. And people are like, the hell is she talking about?
What in the hell has that got to do with anything?
But it actually, if you play with it for a minute, it's like, oh yeah, I got it, I see, you know, right? So, or, you know, the other one that just jumps in my mind right now is watching water boil and the molecules getting excited. Well, you know, now you can feel that, and to then explain and play with this, which is talking about energy and, you know, expansion within yourself. Yeah, that's a seamless shift, not a move. To see, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do.
And phrases, euphemisms, just did one, you know, as a seamless shift is also a metaphor that people can, because it's always been around, they've heard it before, so you're not trying to sell them anything, it's not something new, it's not whatever, there is no labeling, resistance, none of that kind of stuff, but it's a bridge, you know, it's an energetic rainbow bridge that takes them from one to the other, and they go, oh, I got it. And they can feel the I got it is a feel it, I got it first. It may come in and, you know, have a whole cognizing effect in addition to, you know.
Yeah.
But it's the I got it on the other level, because it's all about frequency and the heart and the energy of it. And then the higher mind then kicks in instead of the ego mind swatting it around.
Hopefully. Hopefully. I said one as one who has allowed the ego mind to swat things around. So that because I keep coming back to I have to be open to hearing a thing instead of coming armed with swatting material. Because that's a thing too.
Yeah, and that also
I've showed up.
goes back to opening the heart.
Right.
Because, on the swatting or sometimes or any of those kinds of things is an indicator that the heart's not open.
Yeah. Wow. It's one I find everything is metaphor. I can't stress that enough. For me, I see metaphor everywhere now. It seems like once the decoder ring is turned up to maximum, well, I don't even know if it's turned up to maximum yet, but once you begin to open it, it's like it's easier to see it everywhere.
Another metaphor that could be used with this is describing this tool. So, and no, this doesn't mean that you have to be good at dancing or anything like that. But you got some rhythm in your step, and you've got some bounce in your step, and so that's shifting. It's an illustration and illustrating the move in frequency. So we do these things all of a sudden, all the time. Sometimes you've said it actually probably at least, I think I remember at least 5 times, Sheila, that you've said, I feel good and I don't have any reason to be, or those kinds of things. So you were shifting and illustrating the frequency move. I feel good, and and then you illustrated the frequency move.
I see.
And what is it? And neither between, shall meet. Kind of, there was no shifting going on.
Right. Yeah, it was it was 1 step forward, 2 steps back,
or sideways or whatever. And again, it's that's why it's moment by moment by moment. Take it
right.
One moment at a time, because the moment is all you really have, and it's really the only thing that exists. And you could spend millennia in a moment, noticing, partaking, playing in, right, illustrating all the moves in frequency. I mean, you could spend a millennia doing that in one moment. And here's a news flash: we do. So there's a metaphor on a metaphor, and I'll raise you a metaphor. And what the other beauty is, a lot of the metaphors, because you're illustrating the frequency, and the frequency is tangible, right? It is the stuff of matter. It is materialized, that we can feel right here, and in a tangible, experienceable, feelable,
shiftable,
right, reality is there. There's there-ness to the there, that it's there, right? It's not just some you can't see it or whatever, but you perceive it, you can encounter it, you can have a connection with it and a co-creation with it. So, and this is maybe just
I am so dizzy in this moment of now. I don't know what is going.
a tiny teaser for another conversation that came in earlier, nudge that came in earlier today. But and you kind of just alluded to it here, Sheila, with it being dizzy and moves, and you've talked about the last couple of days, the different changes in your body or the feelings in your body and all these kinds of things. And so, I was just describing how you could spend a millennia in playing with one moment, and we already are doing that, and how these different things are tangible realities, and some said but because it isn't fit in this thing or that thing or my thought of this, and so this is the teaser for see future show, that our body and our capabilities and the metaphor and language and illustrations we would use, how we would hold what our body is, how our body acts, reacts, capabilities, all those kinds of things, is the next part. Is already changed for some, is in full process of changing, is changing a bit, is going to be changing, right? So it just depending on how many, right? Where it's totally different. And so our languaging and our illustrations of, and using it as an illustrating tool to shift and move frequency, right? And all those different things. This is why these tools are very helpful. Remember, I said not only is it helpful if you're playing with it, but for yourself, because you'll be very thrilled when you build those muscles, when you build the capacity to open to, have an awareness of, feel a little bit of these things, because that will let it in the smoothest possible way.
Yeah.
And now would be, like right now, would be the time to pick the tool up and start playing.
Well, and it's an awful lot of fun. I mean, I did a see, I see the metaphor of this entire day all of a sudden for myself. I did a musing this morning, which I was talking about hidden object games, and that's kind of what this is. All of a sudden, I see that's what life is. It's a hidden object game. That's what this whole thing is. There's metaphor everywhere. Mm-hmm. You're communicating with yourself at every level. Just open it up and let it in, because that's what it feels like, and it's quite delicious. It's so much fun decoding all of these metaphors as I am finding the communication with myself and my other selves. The two of you and everything else is just, it's the most fun.
Yeah, and as you play with that tool, and the metaphors and all of that, it also strengthens the muscle to let the attachment to the locked in descriptors, the locked in, and hey, if you look back at a bunch of the titles that we've and conversations we've had, they're all leading this path to help clear this way, to help play with, to help swim in that a bit, because because they're all energetic envelopes, and because there are all codes and frequencies and geometric downloads that are embedded in each of the conversations. And then as you choose to play with different parts in that, you're off and running on your custom-made, tailor-made playground and path for you, because you custom made it.
I'm a damn good game designer. That's all I can say.
This is awesome.
I know, right?
Enjoy that for a minute.
Well, I've really enjoyed this one, and I love the idea that I really do see the difference between a move and a shift, and I feel like there's move, shift, and then quantum leap, because I'm sure there's others in between, but there's like and it's not like this one's first and then this one's second, and then no. Because there's also quantum leaps that happen before moves and shifts. It just depends on.
Oh yeah, you can get a quantum kapow, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, what was I doing a second ago? No, exactly. Yeah, I get that. I can feel that.
Well, and this reminds me just for a moment of the conversations we had both with David first, and then I think it was the next night it was Barbara. Where there was a lot of talk in those two conversations. Well, it just is. So the kapow and the quantum shifts, it just is. You don't look around and you don't go, well, where is that, or is it? Because this just is. This is, you could say all there is accurate, because it's all. And there is, right? Not, oh, there's all there is. This is all there is, and I don't have any more. And please, sir, can I have some more, sir? Type of stuff. But in playing with this, you are signaling, you are proofing to yourself that you are consciously investing, participating in your own evolution, and doing these things so that you can get the move, shift, sing, kapow, pow, whatever it is, on a whole combination. So you're rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tatting all day long, and zing, boom, ba. It's cool. So some are little, some are big, some are this, some are that, and they all change because they're all connected.
Right.
And you're transmitting out.
Well, I'd love to hear what some other folks might want to share in regards to metaphors they're seeing, metaphors they've used, metaphors that they feel might be helpful to share. I think that'd be cool if, someone finds something that, they'd like to share in regards to metaphors that illustrate or that can even help, that you've used, that you've played with for yourself. I mean, anything. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear from folks about that. And you can do it in the comments, or you could do it, to BZ, Lisa, All of our email addresses are in the how to get in touch with us, or in the show more section. Did either one of you want to say anything else in regards to this particular energetic envelope?
Nope.
No? All right. Awesome. Well, till next time. Mwah.